Can you be friends with your manager?
I say yes, but it's a fine line.
I might go have dinner with them.
I think that's the fastest way to lose trust.
You're never exactly ready for it.
Like, you need to be in a place where you feel comfortable to be uncomfortable.
What I would call that is called situational leadership.
I want to be the best possible version of me as soon as possible.
You're doing something wrong.
But that's what happens in corporate America is that you... Everybody, I'm Preston Poore. Welcome to P Cubed, and thanks for being here today. I'm very excited to have three special guests with us today, and they'll introduce themselves in just a moment. But today, we want to talk about coaching, and we want to talk about mentors in the workplace and how that works. And today started as a very interesting way, I guess, of putting an episode together. Somebody in the room sent a text to me after listening to one of my episodes and said, you know what? Your show is targeted toward millennials. Well, wouldn't you be interested in what millennials actually think about what they want from a leader? I said, well, that's a great thought. And I sent a note back, said, do you have anybody in mind I could talk to? And that individual wrote me back and said, well, no. I slept on it the next night. I wrote the individual back and I said, well, how about you and some friends? And guess what? She said yes, and she brought her friends. And that person that wrote that text to me is my daughter-in-law, Emma Poore. That's fun to say, Emma Poore. So thank you. Thanks for being here. So we've got Emma here, and then we also have Riley Weeks and then Maddie Ross with us. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the coaching, the mentoring, the importance in the workplace, and really what they're looking for from a leader perspective and how that all plays out. So I know that leadership and coaching and mentoring for me played a big role. For when I had people that were wonderful coaches and mentors in the workplace, I could tell how I was engaged in the work that I did. It made a big difference. When my feet hit the floor in the morning, I was excited to go to work. I didn't have those what they call Sunday scaries that you might be familiar with. But I was excited to go to work. But on the other hand, I have worked for dictators, bosses, folks that were not great coaches, leaders, managers, mentors. And so I know what that's like. As a matter of fact, there's some statistics from DDI. That's a report that came out called Global Leadership Forecast. And they said 2 or 3 facts that I want to run by and just kind of prime the pump for our conversation today, if that's okay. Number one, they said that coaching builds trust. Coaching's so important in the workplace, and so is mentorship, but coaching certainly is. And why is that? It says employees are 9 times more likely to trust their manager if they receive regular coaching and feedback. 9 times more. So that's pretty important, right? So you can think about the flip side of that is if they don't get coaching, what's that like? That kind of stinks, doesn't it? The next thing I threw out there says coaching improves retention. Employees are 3.7 times more likely to leave if they don't receive regular growth opportunities from their manager. So that's that coaching, that development that goes along with all that. And the last thing I'll throw out there before we start the questions and just have you all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your backgrounds. Coaching enhances performance. It says here, employees who feel supported by coaching are 11 times more likely to be high performers in their roles. And I know today we've got 3 high performers in the room. So thank you for being here today. Take just a second. So Emma, full disclosure, Emma is my daughter-in-law. So excited. My son, Ben, and Emma have been married almost 6 months now. Is it over 6 months? So congratulations on that. And thanks for prompting me for this episode today. But we'll just kind of go around the horn and really a conversation today. But Emma, if you'll introduce yourself to the listeners today and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. I'm Emma. I have lived in Atlanta my whole life. I went to Georgia Tech, studied business strategy and innovation. And when I entered my career, I was kind of pushed into the financial services space, but kind of had a change of heart and found really passionate and called to move more into like the health and life sciences sector, where I've been a consultant now for the past 5 years. I'm an engagement manager at a small boutique consulting firm, but I started my career at a very large Accenture consulting firm of more than 700,000 employees, and I work for a firm of 200 people. So I've seen really both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. Okay. Really good. That's fun. What do you do for fun, Emma?
For fun, I have a dog, and
Nice.
we like to go on walks and explore Atlanta and travel.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Good. Thanks for being here. O'Reilly, how about you?
Hi. So Emma and I went to high school together, so I'm also from Atlanta. Been here my whole life. I went to University of Alabama for college. I studied business,
Roll Tide.
advertising, and psychology. Yes, Roll Tide. And, I had some internships in financial services and large news corporations. And then right out of college, I worked for an executive search firm, and now I work for a large furniture retailer in product safety. So that's where I am now. But I don't know
Excellent.
where I'll be forever.
What do you do for fun?
Recently, I've really gotten into needle pointing.
Needle pointing.
Yes, and I also enjoy going on walks with friends.
Tell me about the needle pointing real quick for listeners. How do you get into that? I mean, do you poke
Um,
yourself and find it's
yeah,
fun or what?
honestly, they inspired me. They
Oh,
needle
did
point.
they?
Yeah.
Okay.
And my brother and his wife are expecting a baby, so I wanted to make her
Okay.
something. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's why I got into
I
it.
hate to say that I know this, but is smocking still a thing at all
I
from
have no
needlepoint?
idea.
No, you have
That's
no
like
idea
the
what
little
it is.
babies that have the needlepoint
I have no
collar,
idea.
right?
Very good. See, there's a difference generationally already. I like that. That's really good. Okay, really good. Thanks for being here today. And Maddie, how about you?
Yeah, thanks for having us. Maddie Ross. I am a product manager for pharmaceutical software in the healthcare space. I have my whole career has been in the healthcare industry.
Okay.
I've worked in a hospital in their finance department did healthcare consulting right out of school, and now I'm in the software space.
Uh-huh.
Went to Georgia, so go
Okay.
Dogs. Was a
Go
finance
Dogs.
major there.
Yeah.
And live in Buckhead.
Okay, excellent. So we've got Georgia, Alabama, and Georgia Tech represented here today. So that's good. And I forgot to ask you, what do you do for fun?
Well, I won't leave Riley alone in the needle pointing. I do love to needlepoint. I love to cook and host people over, cook them dinner, and yeah,
Good. Okay.
and
Oh,
play tennis.
Play
on
tennis. Okay.
the tennis team.
Really
Yeah.
good. Tennis is great. Used to play it myself a lot when I was back in the day. I'm going to throw a softball out there for y'all. Let's start with a question real quick. Is that okay? So let's do that. Let's. Each of you comes obviously from different professional backgrounds. Tell me a little bit about the best qualities in a leader that you would look for. What are the best qualities? Just throw something out there, thoughts about, and then I'd like to know why, right? So maybe the quality and why that would be important to you. Thoughts? Go ahead.
I think the first one that comes to mind for me is someone who doesn't just talk the talk, but also walks
Okay.
the walk,
Yeah.
like leads by example. It's a big one. Yeah, like someone who's not afraid to like give you feedback, but like they're also following the advice that they give.
Mhm. So what is that walking the talk actually look like? Do you have an example of somebody that I don't need names or anything like that, but is there somebody that you've worked with that you could say that, you know what, this is what they did and here how they were a great leader to me?
Let me think for a second. I had a boss who was very big about being transparent with our clients.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's like not an easy thing to do. And
Mhm.
so he asked me to deliver information to a client that wasn't easy.
Mhm.
But I think watching him do it over and over again kind of gave me the confidence and the examples that I needed to
Mhm.
deliver information in a very kind way.
Yeah. So maybe
That was
they
a good one.
became credible in your eyes because
Sure.
they were doing what they said they would do
Mhm.
on all that. So it's really good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Who else?
I think it's important to be something I've admired and a few previous leaders that I've had is them being selfless. So them not managing their team for their own benefit, but for the greater team's good as well. That's been super important to me, and I've admired that whenever my manager or director has had that quality.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you all on the spot, but from a specific, because people love to hear stories, right? Just the little anecdotes. Can you think of a time where somebody actually did that for you as a leader?
Yeah, I can. We share in a software company. It's a pretty small company. We have one software engineering team.
Mhm.
So we all kind of fight to have our team's projects prioritized of when that software team can work on developing and dedicating time to executing a project.
Mhm.
And one of my projects, obviously everyone wants their own project to be first in line, next up. But a lot of times it's on business need or a director or a manager getting involved and having that project prioritized. And so I've seen that come around a few times where it was the betterment of the whole company that certain projects of our team were to be prioritized and drive that forward because it was more valuable to business.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great example. And Emma, any other thoughts?
Kind of going along the lines, but I think humility is a big thing in
Okay.
leaders. And I think sometimes leaders forget that they are supposed to be coaching and developing you, but also I think to be a great leader, you need to take feedback from people who are getting direction from you. And I really do appreciate whenever something might be amiss or like there was a situation where like we didn't deliver what the client had wanted. And instead of the blame kind of getting put on me as like the delivery agent of doing it, we both kind of sat there and my manager was like, no, I like misdirected us. Like I also did not see the vision here and I should have protected you from this from happening. And also managers who just actively seek feedback on how they are like impacting you, what they can be doing differently and better, because I think it's like the full 360 cycle review. where like you can't just be kind of siloed and thinking that you only direct down. You also like can affect up with like the kind of feedback you give to make a more effective manager
Yeah.
and leader.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's so important. That's I think that's a key issue is vulnerability. And I actually, it's funny, on today on LinkedIn, somebody asked a question to me and said, how do you build a environment where a safe environment where people can be vulnerable? How would you do that from your perspective? How would you build an environment where people could be vulnerable with one another in the workplace? What would you do?
I think it's setting that tone up front of like, we're going to make mistakes and be like, whenever I have like a new intern or someone below me, I'm like, if it ever takes you more than like 10 minutes to figure something out, like ask me. Like, I think you need to create a culture of like, it's okay to ask like what might feel like ignorant or stupid questions, but we're all learning. Like, no one was hired into a job that they are completely perfect for and know everything.
Okay.
And you should be kind of uncomfortable. And I think something a manager told me is like, if you're ever not uncomfortable or if like your kind of growing pains are like evolving, like you're doing something wrong. Like you need to be in a place where you feel comfortable to be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I think setting that tone of like making sure that you feel comfortable asking those questions, or also being sure that like there's like no perfect answer, perfect person, like showing your own flaws and like owning up to it when like you as a manager might fall short so that your subordinates can also learn from that, I think is really critical.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Any other thoughts on vulnerability at all? Environment? How important it is?
My yes, I think that it's important to meet people where they are and just creating an environment to let them know that however they want to show up. I work remote, but also I
Okay.
think all of us do for the most part hybrid, but
Hybrid.
Emma and I work fully remote, and I think in a remote environment, it's super interesting. Of you're just on video calls with your team. My team is dispersed throughout the U.S., so we're never really in person together.
Mhm.
And that is a unique situation of making everyone feel comfortable on a Teams call. It's kind of a weird feeling, but however they show up, whatever energy they're bringing that day, whatever problems that they have, just letting them know that it's a safe space to bring that to my manager, my team in general is important.
Have you been in an environment where you've had face-to-face leadership, where you've worked not remotely but in person?
I haven't since college. When I was in
Wow.
college, my
Okay.
internship
Okay.
were all in person, but
Okay.
every job that I've had in my career post college has been remote.
Wow. That's yeah. Have you really? Okay.
And
So you're remote.
honestly, hot take, I think that because we kind of enter this fully remote environment, we kind of lost like, and I think a big part of creating a vulnerable environment is like having a social level to your relationship with your teammate. And we entered completely virtual, and it's almost like we had such cold relationships with our managers and our team. And then it's hard to like know like like do you have kids? Like where do you live? Like what do you love to do? Like yes, like what is going on in your life? Because there can be things going on like you're dealing with a whole lot of personal issues and your performance might be tanking, but no one has any idea
Right.
because no one would talk about it and you're all behind a screen and it's really hard to peel that back. So I think it's been something that I've been like more intentional about and seeking out with managers. And also I think managers also kind of realize this shift with the virtual environment that you kind of need to understand like what people are dealing with in a personal level and like creating that kind of like environment where it feels safe in like a professional and personal level. Like, hey, I'm having a really hard time right now. I might be not as engaged as I normally am. And at first that was really hard to find. And I think the whole pandemic shift of virtual work really kind of caught everyone off guard for how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's huge. Any other thoughts on the virtual? Because I want to go down that path for just a minute because I think it's critical. As we do have more people that are moving back into the office, right? There's a realization that there are still people that are either in the hybrid situation or in a purely virtual environment. And so, what do you expect from a leader perspective when you're in that virtual environment? What do you need from them? I get that certainly the vulnerability, the connection, but what does that look like? What's good in that environment?
I think I'm in a unique spot because I go into the office 3 times a week, but my team is dispersed through one of them works from home 100% of the time, and then someone else works in a different office. So I am only with one of my teammates every day.
Mhm.
And my manager is not one of the people in my offices.
Okay.
So she comes, every few weeks and stays for a few days. But, when she's not in the office, if, she's busy or is in meetings or maybe is taking the day off, it's a little bit more difficult to feel connected because, if you're not talking to someone or see them in the hall, it's like almost like they're not there. I mean, they're there, but
Mhm.
it's hard to feel connected to the group when your leader isn't right at your fingertips all the
Right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really tough. So, how can they help you in terms of a leadership perspective? How do they stay connected with you? What would you like to see?
Um, I think we have regular meetings, like just
Yeah.
as a team and
Mhm.
one-on-ones, and I think those are really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, even when we're on with other teams or clients or whoever,
Yeah.
just hearing feedback and her explain things or
Yeah.
other teammates talk, I think that helps with the connectivity.
Sure.
And going off what Emma said before, just hearing personal things that go on, I think makes you feel more comfortable with somebody
Yeah.
and having that vulnerability with them.
Yeah, that's so true. So I remember because you can harken. I think we were just on the 5-year anniversary of COVID, right? And so everything shifted. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what Teams. Well, you learned real quick what Zoom or Teams were, and that capability. But I found working at Coke, and I had some really good leadership in that, is that we would actually do one-on-ones with people for like a half hour and connect, or a Friday afternoon happy hour, right? So I don't know if y'all did stuff like that where you do goofy stuff or come and do trivia and have a drink together over the line. But I thought the important part is the one-on-ones, you could actually invest time in hearing what was on the other person's mind. It wasn't gossip. You weren't trying to gossip. You're trying to get to know the person, hear what's going on in their world, professionally and personally. And then during the week, you could ping them, say, hey, how can I help you? How you doing? That kind of stuff. So that makes a big difference, doesn't it, when you're doing that?
Absolutely. And I normally have one-on-ones with my managers and push for it. And I will say, again, another hot take, but I've had, I think it's tough because as you go up in your career, you get more busy, obviously, and you
Sure.
have other priorities. But I've had managers who stood me up on one-on-ones and
Uh-huh.
not even given me a notice. And I think that's the fastest way to lose trust,
Oh, yeah.
as a manager with your team. And it's happened across the board. And I've even found myself getting caught in commitments where it's the call's running over and I have someone waiting for me. And it's tough. It happens. But I think whatever you can do to have those one-on-ones, but if you have those commitments and you set those expectations of that time together, stick to it, because when someone just blows you off, that makes you feel like you're not even worth their time.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sucks.
it does. It
It
happened
sucks.
to you.
And it's
Exactly.
awkward, yeah.
It's very awkward.
Then you're
it's
like
hey, are
getting
you still
stood up.
joining?
Yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
time still good for you?
Yeah.
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 You feel like
Yeah.
a loser sitting on the other
A
side of
little
the
bit,
screen, right?
yeah.
Everybody, sure.
By yourself, yeah.
And it's happened with multiple people, so I know it's not just a singular instance. But
Or they come blowing into the call and it's like a checkbox exercise, right? And they just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, and they say, "Okay, great, have a great week, a great weekend." That's so true. I think there's the empathy, there's the prioritization of the people. We all have projects that we have to work on, but if you're a really good leader, manager, and you're a coach, you are really invested in that person that's on the other side of that screen, or that you're in front of in an office talking to, and really caring about that other person. And that's where I've seen the best leadership and managers that will do that. And I can't say I was always the best at it as well, because we all get stuck in that, we're busy kind of thing. But if you'll slow down just a little bit and take a genuine interest in somebody else during that situation and be humble with it and be vulnerable, you'll build that trust over time, right? And do what you said. So good. Any other thoughts on all that? I know it took us down a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think that's an important thing for our audience to hear today, is that's a reality right now. And that's what we want from our managers in those situations, is to lean in, pay attention, and engage with us on that. So that's really good. Here's another question for you. We have some generational differences. Easy for me to say. I love how we're not going to cut that out. We're just going to leave that in there. I love that. But the generational differences, because I'm a Gen X, y'all are millennials, or zillennials, and then there are Gen Z, which I hear are Zoomers, right? That's what I've heard them called, Zoomers.
Haven't heard
Yeah,
that
you haven't heard
either.
that one either, huh? Yeah,
But I like that
Zoomers.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
Zoomers.
it.
Yeah.
Well, it fits, right? Because we just got done talking about the virtual piece and all that. But with that generational difference, has there been a leadership shift or change that you've seen, a need, anything on that? Because I know we're all led a little bit differently. We've grown up differently. We expect different things in the workplace. But can you see a difference at all when you're interacting with the different generations in terms of leadership perspective? Emma, you're nodding yes. Maddie, you too.
Well,
You're both in.
I'm thinking of what's the generation that's in their mid to late 30s right now? Millennials? No.
I think that's the upper millennials.
Yeah, that would be it. Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
geriatric millennial. I've got one in the room looking over here, right? So Devin is
Okay.
one of our
So
producers.
all of my managers have all been late 30s, early 40s. I have seen a trend with them compared to other managers in my group that they give me a lot of autonomy in my role. I have full responsibility from a financial and product marketplace
Mhm.
for all of my product suite. And so I feel very much in the driver's seat with making the calls, making the shots of how I want to strategically place my products.
Mhm.
And they are there honestly to support and give guidance when I need advice or help moving something forward. And so I feel that my leaders right currently and previously in that age bracket have been more comfortable giving responsibility to those that they trust and to carry out their responsibilities. So
Good.
yeah.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, good. Thoughts?
All my bosses have had kids my age, so
Okay.
I've always had older bosses.
My generation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
But I feel like people that I've worked with that maybe weren't like I wasn't directly reporting to them that are in their late 30s. It's almost been more of a casual relationship,
Okay.
and so I think it's easier for them to give feedback and to ask them questions because you don't feel like your next raise would be impacted by it or you would have, I don't know, but
More relaxed.
it's just more casual, more
So you don't have
relaxed.
the
And
I
formal
feel that too.
feedback,
yeah,
the
yeah,
performance appraisal cycles and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. I want to go down that pathway for just a quick second.
yeah.
Do you all like feedback in the moment, or do you want to have somebody wait to give you feedback and wait 6 months or whatever? The environment I grew up in, because this is generational question, easy for me to say again. The way I grew into the system or up in the system was that I would get feedback once every 6 months, and it would be recorded and then held or whatever, right? And then my manager and I would have a conversation, and so you always dreaded going into that office and saying, okay, it's my 6th year. I got to put my review together, prove myself, all the things I've done, go in and match and see if we're aligned. And here's the rating I think I should get. Here's the rating they think, and then come to one. But I'm read and I'm seeing and I've experienced it's much more effective in having that casual conversation, providing feedback to you. And if that's the case, why is that so important? How is that much more effective than what I was brought up in?
I mean, I personally love feedback.
Yeah.
I want feedback as soon as possible and tell me exactly what I did wrong and how to improve. I mean, if I'm in a meeting with a bunch of people, like, yeah, please don't give it to me in front of 30 people.
Oh yeah,
But,
sure.
right after, please come to me and be like, hey, like, you maybe shouldn't have said that, or maybe you should have gone about this way. And like, I love that because I want to be the best possible version of me as soon as possible. So let's give me the feedback so I can get there sooner.
Yeah, that's a principle I have lived by, is that you praise in public, but you give correction or feedback or whatnot in private, because that makes a big difference. And I've been in situations where I've had a manager, correct me in front of everybody else. That ain't too nice either, right? So yeah, so good point, great point. What other thoughts do you have on that? Anything else?
I just feel like if you wait 6 months, you're basically losing 6 months of productivity.
Oh yeah,
And so
sure.
it's like, why, just stop, start. And also, I'm totally with Brett. Like, I would love feedback the minute, because it's also hard, even if it's been like a month after something happened, to look back and try to remember the situation. I love it when a boss calls me after a call and they're like, hey, that went great, but here's something to consider for next time.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's recognizing you gave it your best, because like most people do recognize you're trying your best. You just need redirection.
Yeah.
And then giving you direct pointers on to like immediately deploy and be aware of going forward. And that's just so much more effective, and you grow so much faster that way. Versus like writing it down and then waiting. And it also makes performance review hard for them to like think back to everything they could possibly give you feedback on.
Yeah.
If you are really waiting 6 months.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things, you write things down. Just to share a quick story with you at the Coca-Cola company, I remember I used to work in a group called strategic merchandising. And so all the racks and the point of sale material that you would see for Coke would come out of our office. And I had 15 people reporting to me. It was just a crazy world, kind of like a Rubik's Cube, if you know what that, I'm sure you all know what that is. But in that's where I tell people I lost all my hair and I turned bald. I mean, there was so much stress that was going on during the whole time. And I'll never forget, I remember getting ready for an annual review, and it was just a tough moment in my career. And I remember there was a whiteboard in my office, and I wrote down all the stuff that I had done over the last 6 months and all that. And I just sat there a little bit deflated, and I wrote down, I feel like I'm a failure every day coming to the office. And then I wrote down, I had to flip the script on that and say, no, actually, you're a difference maker. And so I had to have that mental conversation with myself. And then I go into my manager's office, and I told that manager, I said, quite honestly, I feel like I'm failing every single day here. And I think that took the manager back a little bit, because the individual said, you're not. You're doing a great job. Well, what role would immediate feedback have played along the way versus waiting for me being non-productive for those 6 months to a year, right? So great point. If I had heard along the way a little bit of encouragement or correction or whatever it was, instead of having the mystery conversation that comes up every 6 months or a year, it pays off big dividends. So certainly on all that. I know the topic of today's conversation really around coaching. So a difference between coaching and then in mentorship a little bit. I want to talk about coaching. Why is a coach as a leader and or manager beneficial in the workplace? Have you worked for somebody that's more of a coach for you that helps you in your development and coaches you along versus telling you what to do? They'll empower you and work with you and pull the very best out of you on that. Have you worked with people like that before? Does it make a difference?
It does, yeah. And I think it's also, I've had my managers, my two previous ones, they have never really been my official mentor at work, but they have been a coach as my manager
Mhm.
or as my director.
Mhm.
And I have seen a lot of growth from having them coach me throughout my current role and into
Mhm.
promotion and into my current role now. But yeah, I think it does make a really big difference.
Yeah. So that will help your trajectory, right? If you have somebody that believes in you, will coach you, help develop, so you go to the next role on it. What other thoughts do y'all have on that?
I also feel like coaches, they have an end and goal, and that is like getting you to the team to win.
Yes.
And
Very good.
I feel like one of the most prominent conversations that stands out in my head from like a great manager I had a long time ago was my first time meeting him. I was on a brand new project. He said, "Hi, Emma. Really excited to be working with you. How am I going to get you promoted?"
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa, like normally you're just like them, like asking for like what to do, like just go run into like the tactics of like what to do. And he
Yeah.
was like, what are your goals? Like at this company and like the next level, like how am I going to help you? And how can I coach you to get there?
Mhm.
And I was like, this is amazing. And so we kind of talked through it and like we were able to couple how I can use like the tactics of what I'm doing in this project to help with my overall like development story to get me promoted, which was
Mhm.
so great to have the bigger picture of again, like what are we driving towards versus just getting through the day.
Mhm.
And I feel like coaching as a whole really has to be thinking about like what are you trying to achieve, and that's trying to get your team and your sub team to win.
Mhm.
And how are you going to do that for them as well? So
That's so good. Yeah, it makes me think about leaders that talk to you a little bit about the why, and they have you in that interest and help you see yourself in that why instead of checking the boxes and doing the task. To your point, there's another thing I learned, Emma, a long time ago from John Maxwell, and he said this: there's three questions that everybody's going to ask of a leader. Number one, can I trust you? Number two, do you care for me? And number three, can you help me? Right. And to your point, and so he started off that first question, how can I help you? Right. And that probably painted a different picture in that first interaction that you had on that. What do you think, Riley?
So what comes to mind for me is my parents own a financial services company, and I've interned there. I worked there sometimes here and there, and my dad is a big coach for me. And so
Okay.
when I was there,
That's great.
he was always, hey, like here's how to get to where you want to be.
Mhm.
And so that's really impacted me, and still today. I mean, my parents are my best friends, and they coach me constantly. Sometimes I don't want that, but
Yeah.
they're always there to
It's
coach
okay.
me, and it's definitely helped me improve.
That's great. I love that. It's funny that you mentioned that. I had somebody in here recently that said that his dad was a great coach to him, so much so that he would do practice interviews with him before he would go
Oh, I do that.
interview and stuff. Do you do that with your folks on all that? Yeah. So this really, I mean, that's awesome,
Yeah.
right? To have that and somebody that leans in, cares enough about you to help you prepare and get ready
Definitely.
for that. So that's really good. I love that. Real quick here, what's the difference between a leader that tells you what to do and one that helps you discover the answers yourself? What's the difference? Somebody that tells you what to do and someone that helps you discover the answers yourself.
I think you need a balance. Like, I don't
Do you?
think one way of either is helpful. Like, I think you need someone to be like, hey, here's how you do it, but also like, here's the thought process. So next time, I'm not going to tell you. I'm just going to be like, but why? Like, what do you think?
Yeah.
That's what works best with me.
No, I think that's fair. That's good. I like that because leadership is modeling the way. And a lot of times when we get into a job, you don't want just somebody to throw you into it, not show you the how behind
Right.
it. But if they can teach you not only the how, but then the thought process. And then as you go along through that, as you make mistakes or you do well or whatever, they're either praising you or correcting you on that. And that's very helpful. I've been in a situation where I've given people a task before, and I was all big on this empowerment stuff. And I just said, hey, here's the task, go get them. And none of them were ready for it. And so I floundered in that, and I was criticized for that, quite frankly. And then so I learned a lot from that. And there's a big difference between delegating and empowering somebody. Delegating, right, is where you go to somebody and just tell them and say, okay, here's what I need you to do. tell me what we just talked, make sure that we have clarity on that, and then commissioning them to go do it. Empowerment really is where you say, here's what I need done, but you don't tell them the how necessarily, right? Because they have the training, they have the thought process down, and you don't want to dictate. So I think you're exactly right. There's got to be a balance. And what I would call that is called situational leadership, right? Because early in your career, you may not have that direction of the how, but later on you will, right? And so that's where they can empower you. So that's good. Great point. Yeah, excellent. What else?
It really sucked. Like to that point, like I've been in both situations where like I've just been given like micromanaged and given small tasks, and it's boring. You feel like no one trusts you. But then I've also been thrown off the deep end with like
Oh, yeah.
nothing, and you're
Yeah.
kind of, to your point, floundering.
Yeah.
You're like, I need parameters to know
Yeah.
how to do this. And I think what I found best also on like my end is to ask managers when I do feel like I'm put in more like a sink or swim situation. I'm like, what are you expecting? Like, what is your vision here? Like almost reverse engineering like what they're expecting, so I have some guardrails to try to fit within. But I do think the best way to do it is kind of like walk through it with them one time and then give them the thought process, then kind of like empower them to then go off and be self-sustaining. And I mean, sometimes like there's a degree of like being in the deep end that I think is good to challenge yourself. But I think if you just throw people off without the right tools to get back up, you're going to disempower them and probably lose that trust and interest in that position.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a big thing. One of my managers, and this is maybe the wrong phrase, but the individual said you need to learn when to helicopter down and helicopter out. So if you've empowered somebody, let's say you need to know when there's an intervention needed and not, you really don't want to intervene unless you have to. And there's certain parameters you can go around all that. But yeah, certainly I think that's a big piece on that. I want to ask real quick. You asked Emma directly to you real quick here. It said you raised an interesting question one point. You said, can a manager be a mentor? So we're switching from the coaching to a mentor. Can a manager also be a mentor, or should mentorship be sought separately? What's your hot take, as you say?
I do think ideally leaders need to have a component of mentorship woven into what they're doing, because to the point of like vulnerability and understanding like your overall goals and growth and like what's going on in your life, that is a part of the holistic, I think, management style that really creates a successful manager and then successful growth in their team. But I also do think it's important to find mentors outside of your manager, because at certain times you're going to face roadblocks with managers where you can't talk to your manager about what you're dealing with them and how to navigate that situation, and career paths that might be leaving or staying at your company. And I think it's really important to have mentors who are unbiased to your day-to-day activities who can help advise on that. But I do think mentorship is part of the formula that makes a really successful manager. But I think it's not the only place you seek it out.
Yeah, so true. And I found that a lot of my former managers after I left, turned into mentors, right? So you could reach back because they knew you and they knew your strengths, your limitations. They would encourage you if you had a great relationship and give you some advice and point you on the way. So yeah, those are all great things. So thanks for the hot take. I love that. Just teasing.
I thought that was too.
It wasn't.
Pretty normal.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
hot take.
I was gonna say, would you agree? I don't
agree.
think that was a hot take.
Because I think if you only have one manager or one mentor, and that is the person that you directly report to, there's some level of, they can be like 75% upfront with you, like give you 75% of the truth,
Yeah, so
because
good.
they have to balance wanting what's best for their team. And if you're good at your job, they want you to stay on your team, but they also want the best for you and for you to develop and you to grow. And that's hard to balance, keeping your team strong and risking losing that person, but also wanting the best for the person. So it's definitely hard to balance. So I think that there is a level of, they hold back a little bit to what a totally unbiased mentor could be. Yeah.
But also, if you think about it, they are the only ones that see your day-to-day activities. And there's definitely an inherent bias when you talk to unbiased mentors, because like you're saying it from your point of view. And you probably are a little bit biased towards yourself and what you're doing and like your own like unconscious biases. And so when you're telling your mentor, like they might validate you, like, oh, like from your perspective, like that makes sense. But your actual manager who's a day-to-day seeing like what you do and actually like the reality of it all. I think there is like there's a certain degree where you are the only person that has that ability to now give that mentorship based on what you're actually seeing ground level. And I think you can't just kind of like put blinders on and ignore that, but not, again, to Maddie's point, completely dive into it and make it like a mission to be their mentor. But you do have such an interesting purview to how they're succeeding or like what their pitfalls might be that they're not aware of. Cause like you're not going to know your own blind spots. And that's a big part of managers, is to help you, coach you around that and mentor you to like make sure that you're thinking about it holistically. So
Yeah. Well, let's tie a bow on this real quick. I want to go down a rabbit trail for just a second. Can you be friends with your manager? Can you be friends with your manager?
I say yes, but it's a fine line. I don't
Okay.
know what you guys think.
And I guess the question would be, what does friendship look like, right, with a manager?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Mhm.
I'm never gonna go on vacation with my manager.
No.
Very
But
good.
like I might go have dinner with
Mhm.
them to
Mhm.
like add vulnerability. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was going to say the same thing of you're not casually seeing them. Well, for us, we never really see them in person
Yeah.
except travel. So
Right.
in those situations, that's when you can be more friendly. But on catch-up calls, etc., there's a friendly component to it. And we never just dive in straight to business. Like you have to build a little bit of a relationship to be on the friendlier side. But
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. So there's some boundaries there, certainly. And you see different people exhibit it different ways. I know people that go play golf on Saturday mornings together, right? They're the boss and the manager, and they're all together. And it's an interesting dynamic. You see others where they just don't care, right? They're just like totally separate the work from the personal life, which is okay too. It just depends on the leadership. And so I think the leader's responsibility is to understand everybody on their team and how to best approach that instead of trying to bring everybody in and say, okay, we're all going to meet in my house on Friday night for dinner kind of thing. And then not everybody might want to do that, right? So we just have to know how what motivates everybody on that. I want to ask you all, are you mentoring anybody right now in the workplace or outside? Or do you want to someday?
I would like to someday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Currently not right now, but would
Okay.
like to.
And so what are some good things that you've taken from other mentors in your life that you may want to pass on, Maddie?
I'm trying to think more broad across my career instead of just where I am right now. I don't know. Can you come back to me?
Yeah, sure. We can come back. Any thoughts on that at all in terms of the mentorship, or you're mentoring somebody, or here's what I would like to do, or lean into somebody?
That's tough.
Thoughts?
Because I feel like we can sit here and talk about what makes a good manager, but I've had a few interns where I've managed them, and it's so hard to get feedback in a very productive way.
Mm.
And it's something that I think is definitely a new challenge to figure out how to gracefully give the right amount of impact and coaching to someone that you would view helpful as yourself. So I think it's so much easier said than done. And I'm kind of realizing they can be a great person, but when you're trying to give feedback and figure out how to do it in the most productive way, it's tough. So
Yeah.
there's a reason why there's lots of pitfalls to management styles and being a good manager. But I think that it's important that you kind of put yourself back in their shoes when you're getting feedback. And even if it is tough
Empathy.
and uncomfortable, you make sure that you're thinking, what would I want in that situation? And how can you balance thinking holistically of what you're trying to get them to drive towards, but also making sure that you're thinking about their best interest.
Yeah,
So
that's so true. There was an article I think that came out in the Wall Street Journal. And it's funny. It was at the same time this came up in a mastermind I was running last summer. And I had about 20 people on a call, and we were talking, and they said, well, let's talk about feedback for a second. How do we give constructive feedback to the Zoomers, Generation Z, Gen Z? And what the Wall Street Journal, this article came out and said is actually they receive the feedback differently. And a lot of times you might be familiar with this because it's very cliche, but the old sandwich compliment, you do the compliment, and then you nail them with the criticism, and then you come back and say, oh, but you're doing a great job kind of thing. That's a bunch of BS.
Yep.
But what this article says is that if you're looking at if you start with I believe you have great potential in our organization, what you're doing, I believe in you. Here's some feedback that will help you. And then talk a little bit through that. People receive that from Gen Z a little bit better because you're believing in them and not necessarily, you're providing the criticism and the feedback, but you're starting with that point of believing in them and their potential. And they like to hear that. They receive that very well, apparently. So that's a little bit of I think, a principle that people can go by and learn. Do you think that would work?
I
Make a
don't like
difference?
compliment sandwiches. I like
Good.
how you just outlined
Yeah.
but I really appreciate whenever I do get feedback, if there are ever pieces of criticism,
Mm-hmm.
they're marked with, you did this in this scenario, try it this way instead.
Yeah.
And so it's not just criticizing how I did something, it's
Yeah.
giving me a recommendation for how to do it better and different next time.
Yeah. Really good. Okay, good. Yeah, it always kills me. People say, I love feedback. I love feedback. I'm like, well, come on. Do you really love feedback? Do you really love it? Get it all the time? Yes, I do. But at a certain point, it's overkill. That's just me. I apologize.
I mean, no one likes being told they do something wrong.
That's right.
You want to be told
That's
you're
right.
perfect, but
I was on the phone. I was on a coaching session this morning with a CEO of a nonprofit. And we talked about that it takes 6 encouraging words, 6 phrases, being encouraged 6 times to overcome 1 negative feedback. And a lot of that's our psychology. We have this fight or flight mentality behind us. And so when you hear that negative thing, that's always typically what we remember, the feedback. But if you have somebody not encouraging you at the same time, that's all you're going to hear is the negative stuff. So leaders need to know that it takes 6 times to encourage somebody to lift them up to counteract that 1 piece of criticism. So there's a balance right there, right? So you have to think about that too. All right, as we wrap up, we got about 5 minutes left, so I want to go through these before we close out. These are meant to be just frequently asked questions that listeners have sent in. No, they haven't. I just made them up. But we'll go through these real quick. Not much dialogue, but just pithy answers. Pithy meaning short. I don't know where I got that word from one of my managers years ago at Coke, but I'll use it all the time. So hopefully you know what that means. But here's the first question that the caller would have called in with or sent in, right? How do I know if I'm ready to lead? How does somebody know that they're ready to lead? How do you know you're ready?
I think when you're able to, at least for my line of work, more take a strategic view of what's going around in your current team, but also beside you. So you're able to look right and left, realize what's going on, take themes, and be able to act on them strategically.
Good.
Yeah.
I like that answer. Anybody else?
I'd agree. Like you've built trust in doing, and now you have reached the level of being able to show other people how to do.
Okay.
Like you master the tactics of like the execution piece, and then you can take that step up to show people how to think about it holistically.
Okay. That's good. And I would add to that, when you move into a leadership position, it's not easy. And it's less often about the actual task. It's more about the people. And so when you have that heart and mind shift toward how can I help the people and the team achieve something greater than they would by themselves, that's where you start to think, maybe I'm getting close to being ready. But I'll be honest with you, you're never ready. You're never exactly ready for it. But that's what happens in corporate America is that you perform well, you get promoted right into that position. And we find a lot of times that people like myself early on got promoted because I was a top performer, but I wasn't a great people person. So I had to learn all those things and had a lot of collateral damage in the wake and behind me. But that's the way it was. Now, that was not a pithy answer, but we're going to go to the next one. From me perspective, what would you do if your leader is your manager is not a great leader? How do you handle that? What would you tell people on the other side that are listening today or watching? How do you handle it if you have somebody you're working for that's a micromanager or not a good leader? What do you do?
Coach up.
Coach
Give
up.
them feedback.
Tell me more.
Well, if like they're never checking in with you, you should say, hey, I would love to be checked in more. I don't feel connected. Or whatever the issue is, you just have to say, hey, like, I really enjoy this job, but you're kind of in my business all the time. And I would just love to feel like you trust me in doing this task or whatever it is.
That's good. That's really good. I had somebody, Riley, tell me one time in a mentoring session, he was a VP, I was a director, and I went in there talking about I need to give some feedback to my manager about something. He said, it's not good to give your manager feedback. I thought, what a toxic work environment
And
for
you
somebody.
leave.
Right.
And you
then
leave.
Right.
That wouldn't work
it just
for
was
me.
not a good, no, I know. It just wasn't
Yeah,
a good
no.
thing. And I thought about it. And that means every piece of advice we get is not always gospel. It's not the right thing. So you have to process what that is, who it's coming from, what the motivation was and everything. But interesting thought on that. Last one. How can I balance career growth with work-life balance? I don't like this term work-life balance as much. I like margin better for it. But how do you balance that? Because I know you all are growing in your careers right now. How do you balance that for things that you enjoy doing?
I think back to the vulnerability. If your managers know what's going on in your life, you can say, hey, like when I was getting married, I was like, hey, I've got a wedding coming up. Like I'm going to be a little bit pulled out or like I need to balance. I think it's being transparent, like what's going on in your life and then making that a priority and recognizing your boundaries when you do that. And I think managers that set those boundaries and you see them do that, oh my gosh, like that is the most refreshing thing ever. Like managers who are emailing you at 1 a.m., scary stuff. Because then you think that they expect you to be doing
Stay
that
away.
too.
That's right.
So one of my managers actually had like a sub note and it said like, if I'm emailing you outside of office hours, like that is on me. Do not see this as an expectation for you. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really good.
So
Of course, I had a manager that left at 4:30 or 5, and you didn't hear from him. If you really needed him, you weren't going to hear from him. So it's the other side of that too, right? You got to be available sometimes on that. So good. I got to end it there. Anything else that is on your mind that we didn't cover today that you want to come in and talk about or drop on us? Any advice you'd have that you want to close with? That's okay. If you don't, that's okay. Okay, good. Well, thank you, all three of you, Maddie, Riley, Emma. Thanks for being here today. And thanks for those that are listening today to P Cube. I think this has been a wonderful episode. Time flew by for me. Just listening to these three valuable perspectives from these young professionals, these Zillennials, or what do we call them? Zillennials, millennials. So really good. And so thank you for listening to P Cubed. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please share this episode with folks out there, like or comment on social media. And make sure you either subscribe on YouTube or the different platforms we have. And you can also follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Preston Poore. This is P Cube. Take care and talk soon.
TikTok?
No TikTok.